So how does the specific carbohydrate diet work, and how does it help heal an injured intestine? Well, complex carbohydrates that are not easily digested feed harmful bacteria in our intestines, causing them to overgrow, producing byproducts and inflaming the intestinal wall. The diet works by starving out bacteria and restoring the balance of the bacteria in our gut. The allowed carbohydrates are monosaccharides. They have a single sugar. The molecular structure allows them to be easily absorbed into the intestine. Now, I know that sounds fancy, but basically is that the monosaccharides are in fruits, vegetables, and honey. There are a lot of details with this diet, and in 15 minutes, we obviously don't have enough time to go through each detail, but I would highly recommend that you purchase Breaking the Vicious Cycle, written by Elaine Gottschall. If finances are an issue and you can't afford it, just about all of her work is online at www.breakingtheviciouscycle.info, or you could visit www.pecanbread.com. I just spotted Jody Goddard in the audience, and I'm sure she'll be at one of the tables. That's a terrific website with the science explained even at a child's level. But basically, the kids can have proteins, fresh and frozen fruits and vegetables, nuts and nut butters without additives, or all sorts of beverages. Fresh pressed is actually better, but there are some beverages that are considered legal on the diet. The kids can have condiments, but you have to make them homemade. In terms of carbohydrates, and remember, this is not a low carbohydrate diet. This is a specific carbohydrate diet. So the children can have breads and pancakes and waffles and cookies, but you can't purchase them anywhere. You have to make them from scratch at home from a nut flour base. The specific carbohydrate diet was designed to help people with bowel problems and not specifically for children with ASD. Dairy is allowed in this diet in the form of butter, certain cheeses, and homemade yogurt. The homemade yogurt not only provides calories, but dairy is probably the best vehicle to get good bacteria into the bowel. And this has caused a lot of confusion and controversy since the research has showed us that our children have an immune reaction to it and an opioid reaction to it. And clinically, we have seen major improvements when we remove dairy. In fact, one of the greatest benefits of the specific carbohydrate diet that I've seen in my clinical practice is it stabilizes behaviors in bowel so that we can actually see what's working and not. So why are we saying dairy's okay? Well, we're not. Children on the autism spectrum, at least in my practice, we don't allow them to have dairy for at least 3 to 6 months in terms of a homemade yogurt. In terms of getting good bacteria into the bowel, because that's one of the goals immediately, the child can use a nut yogurt, probiotics, which are good bacteria in a pill, or fermented food that Lisa just showed you. Many of the recipes do call for butter. In place of butter, you can use coconut oil. The specific carbohydrate diet uses terms called what's legal and what's not legal. And on the Pecan Bread site, they have a whole list of the foods. But just because a food is legal, if you're not getting any help and you're going to try this diet on your own, it does not mean that your child can tolerate it. I have some children in my practice who cannot tolerate almonds, some who cannot tolerate cashews, few who cannot tolerate apples or bananas, at least initially. So just as Lisa recommended, I highly recommend that as well. You have to keep a diet log to see what the kids can tolerate, at least initially. We do usually see die-off reactions. Mostly what we see is messy stools for the first couple of weeks with kids expelling the mucus they no longer need. And we often see a bowel regression at 3 months, 6 months, and 1 year. Now, Elaine Gottschall's work has gone beyond children with autism. I wanted to introduce you to a child that I'm seeing. His name is Joshua, who taught me the most lessons. I met Joshua at the age of 5, and his list of diagnoses include brain injury, intractable seizures, cortical visual impairment, and esophageal reflux that was considered mild. He spent most of his life vomiting and screaming, especially around eating. He had numerous hospitalizations without any signs of relief. At one point, he had a tube put in his stomach to feed him. but he continued to scream and vomit. The first time I saw Josh, he looked like most children that have cerebral palsy. He had almost zero flexibility in his legs with no tone. He was screaming. He was choking and gagging on his own mucus. And when his mom fed him in my office, he vomited immediately after his feeding. His parents, although as you can imagine, devastated, were quite persistent in trying to get somebody to address his severe constipation and frequent projectile vomiting. All the usual testing had been done and all medications were tried. So as you can imagine, Josh made zero progress developmentally. And in fact, his parents carried him into my office at the age of 5 like an infant. I'm just going to show you a little clip of him. Oop. I don't know how to go backwards. Do you know how to go backwards, John? I skipped one video.
On this. How about this? Oh, that didn't work.
Oh, maybe this one. Okay, there it is.
Yeah.
Okay, I just need to click on it, Stan?
Yep,
okay.
just once. You got it.
Okay, this is Josh.
You're fine. You're going to give Monica a shower?
You can see his body very stiff. This is what it was like day to day for him to eat. This is a speech pathologist feeding him. I don't play it anymore. It's pretty terrible. Fortunately, Elaine Gottschalk was still living when I saw Josh for the first time, and I called her in a panic, thinking, this is way above the child that I'm used to treating. And in her wisdom, she said, darling, start with the gut. So today, on the specific carbohydrate diet with goat milk yogurt, vitamins, minerals, B12 injections, enzymes, Josh is now kicking his legs, walking with supports, and last week he stood independently for 11 seconds. The screaming has stopped, and he's smiling and laughing. And I just have a little clip of him here. This was just last week. So you can see the difference in his flexibility.
Look at me how I can run. Look at me.
With his grandmom. And he's just starting to walk supported now.
He's doing this.
This whole family is living an entire life, an entirely different life, as you can imagine. So in summary, there are unrecognized and untreated, treatable gastrointestinal problems in children with autism and in probably children with cerebral palsy, ADHD, and kids who look like they have behavioral problems. More than half of the children on the autism spectrum are deficient in enzymes needed to break down complex carbohydrates. Undigested carbohydrates can feed bad bacteria, and the overgrowth of bacteria creates more injury and malabsorption. The specific carbohydrate diet works for most children by breaking this vicious cycle. The carbohydrates that are allowed in this diet, remember, are predominantly single sugars. The single sugars do not require digestion and therefore can be absorbed to provide nourishment. This diet works the best when the whole entire family goes on this diet. I treat many of children whose the moms also have yeast infections, bad bacteria, colitis, so I'm not a believer in having one little cabinet for the food for the kids. Usually if there's an identified child that has problems, there's somebody else in the family that has problems as well. I see many children in my practice where there's one identified child, and in my own home as well, one identified child on the autism spectrum, but the other kids look definitely like they have ADHD. And so if your other kids look like that, I would highly recommend that the entire family goes on the diet. Most children on the autism spectrum are sick and in pain. They're not badly behaved. I know I'm preaching to the choir here. And lastly, every once in a while you'll see a child who recovers easily. I had one child who recovered in my practice on DMG and on a dairy-free diet. I had another child recover on the gluten and casein-free diet with enzymes, and some children did amazing with secretin injections. However, if I could leave with this one point, it would be that most children, there are no shortcuts. You have to start with a solid foundation and heal the gut first. Thank you.